In my first apartment, I showed my view, but I basically lived in Canary Wharf, like just below Canary Wharf, on the Millwall docks. That was where my first apartment was, literally on the like water on the docks. I think it's called Millwall Docks. I don't know, but basically that's what it was, the water that you could see. So out my window, you could kind of figure out where I lived if you knew the area. Like, not if you didn't. Like, there wasn't much to look out and Google and search for. Like, there weren't shop names, there weren't building names, there weren't super distinctive buildings. Yeah, so that was fine. I didn't have concierge, but I had like porters. So they weren't in my building, but in our blocks, there are a few blocks. I lived on like the second floor, and there are a few different blocks, and we had a porter. So there was like some security, and they were 24 hours, but there was no concierge in my building. You had to like fob to get in and whatnot. But the last few months of me living there was one day specifically that I was, and I never ever sit in my lounge. I never used to sit in my lounge. I'd always be in my office. I was streaming constantly. Like, I was working constantly. I just did not go into my lounge. So one day I was like, do you know what? I'm going to sit in here and I'm just going to chill. I sat there and I hear like shouting from like boys shouting. And I was like, what is that? And in my head, I was like, it sounds like they're saying Talia. And I was laughing at myself because I was like, oh my God, how conceited of yourself that you think they're saying your name. And in fact, I then listened and they were shouting Talia Ma, like, are you there? Are you there? And they were literally standing outside my balcony, a group of people. And they must have recognized the balcony because obviously I showed my balcony furniture. So because it was only second floor, you could kind of see my balcony and you could probably work out that it was my apartment. You could see that I had lights and whatnot. And I was just like, how many times has this happened that I've not been in this room? Because I couldn't hear it if I was in any other room. I could only hear it because I was right next to my balcony doors. And I literally was just like, oh my God, like, I live alone. This is kind of like freaky. I don't like this. And I was going through something anyway at the time. So I was like, do you know what? It's probably time that I move. I've kind of like reached that point. I've outgrown the space. I want to move a little bit closer. Well, originally I wanted to move closer to central London because I was in Canary Wharf and I ended up in Stratford. So that didn't work. But yeah, so that happened. And then I went to Stratford, and because it was a huge block with like 24-hour security, like no one really could get in that didn't know me and whatnot. But my I probably will explain this in a YouTube video, but do you know what? It's taking me so long. I'll just explain it now. Basically, what happened is I showed my view, and because I was right by Westfield, it was very clear where I lived. Very, very clear. And my apartment, like, because it was such a unique apartment and a unique building, like the floor, super double high ceilings, windows all around. From the outside, you could tell which building I lived in. Like, it was very, very clear. Even trying to find the angle of where my apartment is, you could tell which building was mine. Now, in that building, there's only 5 apartments, I think, that had terraces, and I was one of them. So then it's been narrowed down to 5 apartments, of which one's mine. And you could see directly in from so every apartment that had a terrace was on a public floor, what is called a public floor. So a public floor in a tower is basically a floor that has some sort of amenity on it, some sort of thing on it that is available to everyone in the building. So next to my terrace was a public terrace. So a terrace that anyone in my building could go to. Now, when I first moved in, they had these little tiny trees that were supposed to cover my terrace from the main terrace. But they were like dead, and they said, don't worry, we'll replace them so that you have privacy and whatnot. And I was like, okay, great. They ended up replacing them, and they were like these little like Mariah Carey skinny trees. And so from the main terrace, you could see directly into my apartment. Like not like if you sort of looked through, you can kind of see what I'm doing. It was plain as day from that main terrace what I was doing in my apartment, unless I had my blinds down. In which case, what is the point in living in that apartment if I have to have my blinds down all the time? And it was just getting to the point where like people were tweeting out my address. People were saying like, oh, she lives here. She must live on this floor because she's got a terrace. She must live in this apartment. And it was like getting weird. And I was just like, if anyone comes to visit this building and they know anyone in the block, they can get up to the terrace and they can look straight into my apartment and they can see what I'm doing at any point. And like, it was just starting to get really freaky and really weird. And like, I just, and like, I shouldn't have shown my view. I shouldn't have. It was a mistake that I made. I completely underestimated I think how much we'd grown in that time. But it was just, yeah, it wasn't worth it. And I was just like, it was like, the selling point for that apartment is the view, obviously, and like the windows. And if you have to keep your blinds down, why are you spending money to live there? Like, why am I living there? There's literally no point, right? So I might as well live somewhere that doesn't have a view and pay less money if I'm not going to show it, or if I'm not going to, do you know what I mean? Not really your fault for having a window. I mean, it shouldn't be something I have to hide, but I do. And I am aware of that, so. But yeah, so that's basically the reason I ended up moving. And there were a few little other things that I wasn't happy with in the apartment, but they're things that you would just sort of like, I would just look past. But because it was all of this, and then it started getting more and more and more, and I was just feeling like, I literally feel like I was being watched. Anytime I went into my living room, I was like, there's people just sat out there, and they could literally just stare into my flat. Yeah, no more talks of the show. Yeah, I'm not showing my view in the next one. Wait, Viz, if I probably haven't, no. Hold on, I'll text you now, Viz. This is the view out of the window. If I get it. And the reason that I absolutely cannot show it again, because it is just way too obvious where I would be living. But it's, yeah, so I'm not going to make that mistake again. And like, it's all a learning curve. And I was like, I was safe in the end. Nothing bad happened. But that being said, it still was not, it wasn't a situation I should really have stayed in. It just wasn't. Videos. Yeah, that just showed me like, yeah, so I'm not going to be doing that.